Hi and welcome back. Obviously we are not in the shop today, and that's because it's time to start a new project, and typically this is where I get things going in my office, either designing in SketchUp or on a pad of paper. So this next project is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a step stool, and this is something that I'm building for the upcoming Boston Wood Expo. The creative category this year is entitled The Next Step, and the criteria are that it has to be built predominantly out of wood, which I have no problem with, and that it has to fit inside a 30 by 30 by 30 cube. So there really aren't a whole lot of constraints. So I sat down to think about what I wanted to build, and I thought I would go with a fairly simple build from a joinery standpoint. It's just going to be two sides with two steps that are going to get joined into the sides with wedged through tenons. Fairly simple construction, and it should be fairly strong as well. So really that leaves me with designing the sides, and that's where I can get really creative with this particular project. So in thinking about what I wanted for the design for the sides, I really wanted to do something that had very few straight lines. I wanted something very curvy and very shaped that would give me an opportunity to really kind of go off the reservation a little bit. And I also wanted to use cherry, at least for the sides of the step stool, because I think kind of shaped cherry that's sanded to a high grit with a coat of oil can look really, really cool. At the same time, I wanted to use something really durable for the steps, so I'm going to go with rock maple or hard maple for the steps. I spent a lot of time working and reworking my design until I got to something that I was really happy with. I find that especially when working with curves, it can be really important to be able to use pencil and paper, because a lot of times you can just make subtle changes to a curve with your pencil that actually make dramatic improvements in the design. So this is what I ultimately came up with. You can see that it's got these kind of sweeping curves for both the front and the back of the feet. There are flat spots on the bottoms here, and the center of gravity for the design actually puts it right around the middle of that top step, so it's actually going to be very stable. The next thing I need to do is figure out how to transfer this onto a bigger surface and construct my template so that I can use a pattern routing bit for my sides. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how this is going to look once it's actually cut out of cherry. Once I got my sketch to the point where I liked the design, my next step was to transfer that design onto a full-size canvas. In this particular instance, my canvas is a piece of 1/4" MDF, which I'm ultimately going to use as my template. So what I did is I scanned that drawing, and then I essentially loaded it up on my laptop and brought it into my office where we have a projector. And all I did was project the image onto the piece of MDF. The only real challenge there was getting the scaling right, because I really, I cut this piece of MDF to give me the full scale of the final size that I wanted, and then I just moved the projector back and forth until I got it to sort of fill that canvas. So now with the design sketched out on my template to be, I need to go to the bandsaw and then rough it out. I've got my 1/4" bandsaw blade all loaded up, and all I need to do is cut around this form, and I'm going to make sure to leave a good amount of the, actually I'm going to leave all of the black line, and that's really going to allow me to then use the spindle sander to clean up and do the final kind of shaping and get this to really where I want. you can see that I left a good margin around my black line. And really the reason behind that is I want to give myself some flexibility to not just, you know, adhere to the exact sketch that I originally did, but use the spindle sander as a shaping tool where I really can sort of fine tune exactly how these curves will work. So I don't expect it'll, you know, this is only 1/4 inch MDF. I don't expect it'll be that much work to remove, you know, 1/8 of an inch. However, this is going to be a dusty activity, so I will be wearing my respirator in addition to having the dust collector on and the air filter in my shop. Now that I've gotten pretty close to the black line all the way around, the challenge at that point is that, you know, the line isn't perfect. I mean, I drew this freehand off of a projection, so it can sort of be deceiving where you have a fair curve and where you don't have a fair curve. So I find flipping it around where I don't have the line anymore really gives me a good idea of, you know, how I'm doing. And running your finger along the curves too, you can really tell, like I can tell right here, there's a little bit of a flat spot. So I'm gonna need to just take a little bit more material off right here. So I'll keep working it, just taking really, really light passes, and then I may even switch to a flexible sanding block as well to really get, you know, nice, smooth curves on here, because it's hard to do that entirely with a spindle sander, especially on your convex curves like this. But I'm in pretty good shape and I have a pretty decent kind of idea now what this thing is going to look like.